Denn ihr seid Fleisch, von unserem Fleisch und Blut, von unserem Blut. Und in euren jungen Gehirn brennt derselbe Geist, der uns beherrscht.
We have other priorities. We face other problems. The biggest of those priorities is that we need to resolve the war with the Russian Federation.
I want to talk about the Ukraine for a minute, and I know a lot of y'all don't want to hear this, but we might have Vladimir Putin pegged wrong.
Azov.
So who is Azov?
Azov are a controversial Ukrainian battalion.
Prior, not even 5 years ago, there was a discussion that was brought up about a far right-wing militia, which I've spoken about before because there are similar ones, not only in Ukraine, but also in many other different Eastern European countries right now that have taken the state plate of once being this separatist movements and now moving into politics. One of those particular happens to be a separatist party called the Azov Party. That's spelled A-Z-O-V, the Azov Party. And the Azov Party, what they have accomplished in the past couple of years.
The training is not organised by the Ukrainian armed forces, but by one of the most active battalions during the war in the east of the country, the Azov Battalion, often criticised for holding far-right and even neo-Nazi positions. Now, this organisation has stepped into politics by creating the National Core Party. Its leaders refuse to be classified as ultra-nationalists or extremists and define themselves as patriots in times of war.
The official Ukrainian military didn't have enough soldiers to fight, so civilians formed many of their own volunteer battalions, one of which was Azov. Soon after, in November 2014, Azov were brought into the official National Guard. So now they're a legitimate battalion.
FBI agents say he expressed a desire to travel to Ukraine to fight with a far-right paramilitary group.
Over the last few years, experts in violent extremism have grown especially alarmed about the Azov movement. The group emerged from the revolution that swept across Ukraine in 2014, and it has gotten a lot stronger amid the ongoing war with pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine.
And not free rides, they are paying for their own train tickets, but they are made to wait for almost the whole day until the last Ukrainian has boarded.
I want to talk about the Ukraine for a minute, and I know a lot of people have their own positions on it. And the reason I'm talking about this right now is for a few particular reasons, but one reason I'm talking about it right now is because of this. I have been alerted by a friend of mine who's a Muslim woman, shout out to my sister Leah, that something has been brought to my attention that evidently I was missing. What I was missing was how blacks are being treated right now in the escape, if you want to say, from the Ukraine into Poland. And it's kind of
हम लोग सब रोमानियन बॉर्डर पे खड़े हैं, रोमानियन यूक्रेनियन बॉर्डर पे अराउंड 500 to 600 बच्चे हैं। ये लोग यूक्रेनियंस को बहुत प्रेफर कर रहे हैं, यूक्रेनियंस को ही प्रेफरेंस दे रहे हैं, इंडियंस को एक या दो निकाल रहे हैं।
There's been a lot of segregation and racism. It seems like there's a hierarchy of Ukrainians first, Indians second, Africans last. So there has been a lot of segregation in that sense. And then amongst the communities trying to flee Ukraine, there's been a lot of violence.
For lack of better words, it's kind of interesting. Here we have a country that is looking towards the whole entire world to have this sympathy, which they have garnered, the attention. We have people now dedicating themselves and saying, hey, I want to go help the people of Ukraine, and justifiably for the bigger batch of the people in Ukraine, I think this is justified. Then we have the Ukrainian government that's denying letting Africans and Arabs, going to the point of pushing women off the trains, pregnant women with children, and telling them, no, this train escaping into Poland right now, and the dire straits that these people are running from right now is only reserved for white Ukrainians.
No, they're not letting us go. They're not letting the black girl go. We don't have them. We are students.
These people left without taking the blacks, man. None of the blacks, man.
Now, many of these Africans and many of these Arab Americans that are trying to escape, this would include Indians as well. Many of these people that are trying to escape right now, I want you to understand, these people are students. But what they're being held under the guise is that they are trying to escape or trying to rectify themselves and get into Poland. You ready for it? To file refuge, meaning to file statehood, citizenship. They think this is the intentions of these Africans. To file for asylum. That, my friends, goes to show you what's going on here in the larger span. Now I'm going to get into something else, why the reason I think this might be the case. We might have Vladimir Putin.
Основные боестолкновения российской армии, как ожидалось, происходят не с регулярными частями вооруженных сил Украины, а с националистическими формированиями, которые, как известно, и несут прямую ответственность за геноцид на Донбассе и кровь мирных граждан народных республик. Кроме того, националистические элементы, внедренные в состав регулярных украинских частей, не только подстрекают их к оказанию вооруженного сопротивления, но по сути играют и роль заградотрядов. Более того, по имеющейся информации, и это подтверждается результатами объективного контроля, мы видим это. Бендеровцы и неонацисты выставляют тяжелое вооружение, в том числе системы залпового огня, прямо в центральных районах крупных городов, включая Киев и Харьков. Они планируют вызвать ответный огонь российских ударных комплексов по жилым кварталам. По сути, они действуют так же, как и террористы во всем мире. Прикрываются людьми в надежде затем обвинить Россию в жертвах среди мирного населения. Достоверно известно, что все это происходит по рекомендации иностранных консультантов, прежде всего американских советников. Еще раз обращаюсь к военнослужащим вооруженных сил Украины. Не позволяйте неонацистам и бендеровцам использовать ваших детей.
The official Ukrainian military didn't have enough soldiers to fight, so civilians formed many of their own volunteer battalions, one of which was Azov. Soon after, in November 2014, Azov were brought into the official National Guard. So now they're a legitimate battalion.
I know a lot of y'all don't want to hear this, but we might have Vladimir Putin pegged wrong. And he might be pegged wrong based on the information that's out. Now, I know a lot of y'all are like, hold up, what are you talking about? Hold up. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Prior, not even 5 years ago, there was a discussion that was brought up about a far right-wing militia, which I've spoken about before because there are similar ones, not only in Ukraine, but also in many other different Eastern European countries right now that have taken the state plate of once being this separatist movements and now moving into politics. One of those particular happens to be a separatist party called the Azov Party. That's spelled A-Z-O-V, the Azov Party. And the Azov Party, what they have accomplished in the past couple of years.
FBI agents say he expressed a desire to travel to Ukraine to fight with a far-right paramilitary group.
This kinda reminds me when COVID-19 started in China, how black Africans in China were treated back then.
This isn't a place, with all due respect, like Iraq or Afghanistan, that has seen conflict raging for decades. This is a relatively civilized, relatively European, I have to choose those words carefully too, city where you wouldn't expect that or hope that it's going to happen. So it's partly human nature, but they are not in denial.
And not free rides, they are paying for their own train tickets, but they are made to wait for almost the whole day until the last Ukrainian has been.
These are the black community. We are not allowing any black people to enter inside the gates. We are all here. It's only Ukrainians that they are allowing in. Even the ones with kids, they're not allowing them in. It really happened here for days, and nobody's asking any questions. Only Ukrainian women and kids they are allowing into these gates. All the places blocked, and all are full of black. From different communities, from different countries, nobody's talking to us.
What it has done is, it's not only brought the attention of Putin, but it's also brought the attention of the United States prior. Not only that, but what you also notice is this. The United States is one of the biggest proponents from Ukraine, but you know that this threat existed.
These guys saw action, right? Who were they actually fighting against in that archive footage?
They are fighting Russian sympathizers. It's not Russian army, it's Russian rebels, I suppose, or perhaps even Ukrainian-born Russian sympathizers.
On est là exposé dehors avec le froid qu'il y a ici. On ne nous donne toujours pas où nous abriter au fait. On est exposé avec le froid.
यहाँ पे ठंड इतनी है कि हम बता नहीं सकते इतना ठंड और कुछ शेल्टर नहीं है वॉशरूम का कोई ये नहीं है शेल्टर नहीं है कहीं पे कुछ खाने पीने का कुछ ये नहीं है रेस्टोरेंट नहीं है पूरा ओवर
प्रॉब्लम isn't at the Polish border, it is at the Ukrainian border, because you have to step out of the Ukrainian border to get on the Polish side, and the Ukrainians are only prioritizing their citizens. They don't care, they will push you, they will beat you. If you can make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't.
क्राउडेड हो गया है
They are being thrown out to the train. They are not even allowed us in. Indian students are being attacked with sticks and stuff.
We don't have arms. We don't have arms. We don't have arms. We are students. We are students. We are students.
The training is not organised by the Ukrainian armed forces, but by one of the most active battalions during the war in the east of the country, the Azov Battalion, often criticised for holding far-right and even neo-Nazi positions. Now, this organisation has stepped into politics by creating the National Core Party. Its leaders refuse to be classified as ultra-nationalists or extremists and define themselves as patriots in times of war.
Say we had somebody in Mexico or somebody in Canada, or we had a separatist group that was right in our vicinity right here. We said to each other, we said, hey, you know what? These people pose a threat. You know what we need to do? We need to go in and do something. We do this already with our white separatists here in this country. We have been doing this with our white separatists here in this country. These people are so extreme that they are now training children to become soldiers. These people are so extreme, they have now committed numerous atrocities, including attacking people on multiple times, holding training camps for not only children, but for women, including priorly to this invasion taking place where they were training, yes, the same militia group, all right-wing separatist nationalist group, and yes, I do mean incandescence with racism, neo-Nazis I speak of. These are not your regular hillbillies that are weekend warriors and sitting around, bring back NASCAR 7 days a week. Make it a tradition to have, you know what I mean? No, these are not old boys sitting around eating deer meat. These are men and women built on once the same ideology that a man that might seem secular for many of us in history, Hitler.
I watched an Independence Day parade where veterans of the Azov Battalion marched alongside other volunteer militias, surrounded by cheering crowds, who thanked them for defending Ukraine against Russia. But even at the march, there were signs of the far-right ideology that's so common inside Azov. The symbols on their flags have been especially controversial. Azov says it combines the letters I and N for idea of nation, but extremism experts see it as an emblem of Nazism.
The official symbol of Azov, it's a version of Volksangel. It was one of the symbols of one of SS division during the World War II. It is one of more or less usual symbols for neo-Nazi groups all over the world.
And it's not just about their symbols. When it was founded in 2014, Azov drew many of its commanders and recruits from Ukraine's most notorious far-right groups, including outright neo-Nazis.
For Ukraine's sizable Jewish minority, largely concentrated in the eastern city of Dnepr, worries about the growth of the far right were highest during the 2013 so-called Maidan protests. But when stability returned, and with a new leadership in power, concerns about nationalist extremism abated. Russian propaganda has portrayed these far-right groups as a fundamental part of Ukraine's politics. But a coalition, all the far-right parties failed to make it into the Ukrainian parliament in the last legislative elections.
The amount of people who are supporting really far-right movements is fairly small. So there is no far-right party in the Ukrainian parliament, and the latest polls are showing that people are not giving them enough support.
And it's quite of a possibility that Putin, even though the extreme measures it may be, he might have taken the initiative himself because he knew that the world organizations and world governments wouldn't see fit to invade them because they're dealing with their own white supremacists. So maybe what I'm saying is, there's two things here that are underlined, and many of y'all are not going to understand what I'm saying, and some of y'all will get exactly what I'm saying. When I see racism being brought against Africans, and I see racism being brought against Arabs in these countries that are students, people there with a center on learning and collegiate in stature. When I see this and I see these people being denied to get on the train, denied to leave the country, being pushed, having guns pulled out on them, and in one occasion, we saw that some were being fired upon by the Ukrainian government, military. Just like they were Russian soldiers, fired upon, because they were trying to escape like everybody else. So I'm not taking this and I'm saying the bulk of Ukrainian people are part of this Azov movement, or the bulk of Ukrainian people are part of some separatist movement. But what I'm saying is the powers that be in that country were so much of a threat that Putin decided, you know what, since nobody else will do anything about it, I'll do something about it. And I've got me enough soldiers that I can do it.
They failed to win any seats in parliament during the most recent elections in 2019, but their plans in Ukraine are ambitious.
It's hard to explain the surroundings for someone who's watching this, you know. It's surreal. It's like, I don't know, it's like something you read about the great Germany before, you know, in the 1920s. It's a revival of the Indo-European soul. Mm-hmm. And it's all happening here in Ukraine.
The Ukraine has somewhere upwards of mid 300,000 soldiers for the whole entire military. When you cross-annex that with Russia, you're talking about close to almost 2 million. The only people that actually outnumber the Russian military is quite under a few. So when you have small countries like this, you have small governments like this, you have small militaries, it's very easy to infiltrate, throw out propaganda, and get people to believe this is the same thing that Hitler did under his reign. He passed out propaganda, he put in and injected certain ideas into the people, and once that happened, it became a brawling point for that country. Up until the Berlin Wall that separated both ideologies. We saw this before with Mussolini. We've seen this before with Ivan the Terrible. We've seen this before with Napoleon. We've seen this before with Constantine. We've seen this before. Whenever you have a separatist movement and it starts to expand, it starts to spread like cancer, well, those results are not good.
We rode back to the Azov base in northern Kyiv, where Azov commanders had allowed Robin to stay as a potential recruit.
We are Aryans, and we will rise again. That's a way of life, you know. And after the war in Germany, we went back to the benches, school benches. But now we will rise again.
So I'm just saying, based on what I've seen from the powers that be, and they are linked to the ANZO movement, separatist, national, white supremacist ANZO movement that is in Ukraine. I based that and put it together with the videos I've seen that validate not only Asians, Indians, and Africans saying they're not being able to leave the country and not being allowed in because they're being mistaken as asylum seekers. I say there is a possibility that maybe Putin did this proactively based on all the information that goes back now 5 years ago. And if you do a very simple search, you will find the same conclusions, I guarantee you. In fact, you've had over several senators talk about the separatist movements that are not only in Ukraine and are now taking over government, but in several European countries, most of them small, outside of Belgium, outside of Holland or whatever, where these places where they fester in these small little towns, these small little areas or whatever. And these people have hundreds of thousands of followers based on the fact that they don't like, it's not Africans, they don't like Jews in the country. They don't like foreign Asians in the country. They feel they're going to come and buy up all the property. They don't like Africans in the country. They feel that the men are going to come over there and take their women. They feel that the women are going to have unburied children and children out of wedlock and now add on to the deficit of all these weird different things that they think, yet their country itself is a victim of. Go to Holland and look at the numbers for illegitimate children. Mind you, in Holland, prostitution, well, Amsterdam, prostitution is legal. Yeah, I'm not getting it. You know what I mean? Prostitution is legal, but they have a high body count for side babies. The audacity. I think we need to take a second look at Ukraine. I think we need to take a second look at not only what's going on in Ukraine, but the ANZO movement in Ukraine and the lack of our constituents here in the United States being able to give out the information that they should be giving out to the public about ANZO and the ANZO movement. Again, ANZO, check it out. Guys, I'll talk to you later. For all the people of Ukraine that are of color, trying to get back into your country of origin or into neighboring countries in Europe, I wish you the best of luck, and I'll continue to talk about this. But one thing I want to set out clear to my Arabs and my Africans, do not make the mistake when you come to this country to not look at their own situations unilaterally that you're having worldwide as part of this. Think. Oh yeah, one other thing. Stop going to these countries because you think it's decadent or you think it's white or you think it's whatever. There's a lot of y'all with that slave mind. If I go over here, I'll be fine. This is where all the... No, this is where their people go to make money. Who's to say that you can't sit in India and become a multi-billionaire? They built Dubai in the Arab Emirates. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't come to Holland to build Dubai. They didn't go... You get what I'm saying? So, only thing I'm saying, everybody wants to go to Dubai, right? So, only thing I'm saying to you guys is don't put so much compliment into somebody else's culture, so much compliment into somebody's way of life or whatever the case may be, because what you'll find out many times, they're tolerating you being there. They're tolerating your presence, more to say. Doesn't mean you fit in. That just means that you're kind and you're nice and you speak well and, well, we'll tolerate you. Doesn't mean you're accepted. There's a big difference between toleration and acceptance. And I think this was one of the best examples that possibly could be put out there.
Vor uns liegt Deutschland, in uns marschiert Deutschland und hinter uns kommt Deutschland.
The organization responsible was the Hitlerjugend, the youth wing of the Nazi Party.
The idea of the Azov camp specifically is less popular depending on who you speak to. The Ukrainian public offer them some gratitude for the work that they did in 2014 in terms of saving part of the east of Ukraine, but their ideologies are radical for the rest of Ukraine. They don't like immigration, they don't like foreigners.
In 1932, the Hitler Youth numbered just 100,000. Within 2 years, it numbered 3.5 million. And by 1939, it was an army, compulsory for all boys, with girls joining its sister organization, the League of German Maidens. It was the largest youth movement the world had ever seen.
Я не лівих зрядів, я не комуніст. Я не нацист, не фашист. Я націоналіст своєї країни.
It was a way of channeling the natural rebelliousness of youth on organized lines.
Повернем Крим, за ним Кубань! Повернем Крим, за ним Кубань! І проженемо спецку зрад! І проженемо спецку зрад!
Те ж саме ми хочемо привити до дітей, щоб вони любили Україну, щоб вони її не споплюжували, покоління, яке зараз в нашій країні, воно повинно забезпечити фундамент для іншого покоління.